Bridget, thanks for your time. What did you make of those details we got from Minister King yesterday? And what would a genuine compensation scheme even look like?
Well, Catherine King on the eve of Christmas has, put out a draft set of guidelines that Qantas and Virgin would be very, very happy with. There is no serious penalties being talked about here, and millions of Australian travellers have been frustrated for years by cancelled flights, lengthy delays, and baggage arriving on the other side of the country at times like Christmas and holidays that we're going into now. The government's had 3 years to fix this, and what is being released on the eve of Christmas by Catherine King is nothing short of a motherhood statement that the duopoly would be very, very happy. This is their dream code of customer conduct because it has no serious penalties for them for their poor behaviour, and it has a lot of motherhood statements, talks a lot about respect. But as we know, Trudy, international carriers, including Qantas, are subject to quite stringent customer charters in Europe and in the United States. And we've been calling for some time for the government to get serious about making sure the Australian traveller has an aviation industry that's competitive, where they can afford a ticket, where cancellation and delays are going down, not up, and where your bags arrive in the same place you do. And they've, even this latest attempt by them to fulfil the basic expectations of Australian travellers has failed at its first hurdle.
But if there are those big penalties that you mentioned there, isn't there a risk that players like Qantas just jack up the prices, essentially an inbuilt tax, because they know they're going to have to pay a penalty down the track that consumers lose ultimately if that's to happen?
Well, Trudy, there's two choices for Qantas and other airlines operating in the sector. They can either choose to treat their customers with respect, make sure their planes take off and land on time, make sure their baggage handling service means bags arrive in the same place as the customer, and that you minimise delays that aren't weather dependent. I mean, that is very basic standards, and I don't think that any airline worth its salt should be wanting to operate accordingly, rather than expecting, as our airlines do, for Australian customers to put up with poor behaviour year in, year out. This will be the third Christmas holiday season since Albanese's government's been in power where customers haven't been able to access a compensation scheme that is enjoyed by travellers all around the world. And the one way to avoid those hefty penalties, Trudy, would be just get the basics right, which is all Australian travellers have been wanting. The Coalition's had a pay on delay piece of legislation in the Senate since February. The government could have chosen to support that at any time. They haven't, and instead they've once again done the airlines' bidding and released, ghost guidelines almost that won't be worth the paper they're written on just before Christmas.
On another matter, the big rail dispute we're seeing at the moment in New South Wales, it's threatening to essentially scuttle New Year's Eve celebrations in Sydney. It's the most iconic event at that time of the year, broadcast around the world. What would be your message to the unions, and do you think the federal government needs to get involved to actually bring this to an end?
I'd love to see the federal government get involved. They have the powers under the Fair Work Act to do this. But what you're seeing from the Albanese government, and it happened last Christmas when, there were strikes on our wharves that nearly ensured Christmas was cancelled because our wharves only, had to sort of come to a settlement very close to Christmas in order to avoid what would have been a catastrophic event. The unions are very good at picking those emotional points in the calendar where they can exert the most pressure on the community and on the employers. What I very much doubt the Labor Party will come to the rescue of those in New South Wales who want to get to the firework event by intervening, because they didn't do it last year when it would have been an economic catastrophe. And so I very much doubt they'll bother doing it here for some fireworks. They're very much in the pocket of the ACTU, and they've proved that time and time again. And unfortunately,
Bridget, what is your reaction on another matter?
New Year's Eve that'll suffer.
On another matter, we're heading into the election next year. Confirmation from the Energy and Climate Change Minister this morning, Chris Bowen, unlikely to get that advice on the 2035 climate target. It's been pushed back because of Donald Trump, we're told, and having to see the impact. I'm sure you'd like to have a whack at that, but can you really, given the coalition's not likely to have their 2035 target at the start of the election either?
Well, Trudy, we've been clear we're not going to have that. We've been upfront with the Australian public. We've got a plan to get to 2050.
But why not, Bridget? Don't people deserve to know?
Well, we've got a plan to 2050, Trudy. It's not a linear plan. Chris Bowen's the one that's been out there spruiking up his credential, and meanwhile emissions have gone up under him. Now, as a minister, a senior minister in Cabinet, he could absolutely make sure he's got the evidence and the modelling and the data he needs to make a decision. The bare facts are that he doesn't want to have to make a decision because he knows that it won't be in the national interest, and the Australian public will be worse off because of what he'll be having to put forward. So he's decided to put off the decision, like they're doing with everything.
No, we won't hear from either of you on your climate targets. It might be even there, but I'll leave it at that as a free comment at the end. Bridget McKenzie, Shadow Transport Minister, thanks so much for your time and Merry Christmas.
You too, Trudy.